All right. Hello. Hello to all my Worcester Sucks readers who are now listeners. What the hell is this? This is Outdoor Cats, a new podcast product that me and my good friend Chris Rabarge are trying out. Chris, how are you doing?
I am doing great, Bill. How are you doing?
Oh, not bad. So the day is Thursday, December 5th, and we should probably start by explaining why we're even doing this in the first place. I'll say that me and Chris have been talking about doing something like this for a while, and are both fans of the same podcasts. I'd say True and On and Chapo Trap House, especially. And we figured that the local media environs could benefit from low effort leftist podcast about Worcester. So that's sort of my motivation for doing this. There's other newsletters that have done podcasts that I listen to that are great. Read Max, especially, and it's a cool little extension of the Worcester Sucks universe. Chris, why do you want to do this?
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I just really felt like what the world needs right now is two more white guys that have a podcast. It's just a lane that's not really been explored.
Yeah,
So that's why I'm here. Yeah, we're the first ones.
no one else is doing this. No one else has ever done this. There wasn't a wheel, so we can't even be reinventing it
It's true.
because this is the wheel. What you're listening to right here, and that's people are going to be congratulating us in the street, probably tripping over themselves to sort of lay down at our feet and kiss them. I imagine. Which I am fine with. If you see me out in public, feel free to just lay down and kiss the ground that I'm walking on. I think that would be expected and suitable response for seeing me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say open call. You can always kiss the ground I walk on. You can kiss me. Just anybody.
And
If you
kiss me
see
right
me
on the
out there,
lips.
yeah,
I don't
just
care.
kiss me right on the lips. Give me
I'll
a big
kiss
old
anybody.
smackaroo. Yeah, it's fine.
So the idea with this is we're just going to pick a time to record once a week. Keep it loosey goosey, but come to it with a couple things that we want to talk about. Same that I do in my newsletter. The goings on around town. But for this first episode, I think that it would be useful to sort of take a zoomed out look from Worcester and think about this discussion in terms of cities and what this incoming Trump administration means for municipalities and the people in them. Shit's about to get fucked, and it's going to get fucked quickly in ways that we have no real way of knowing right now. But it's kind of incumbent upon us at this time to do some things. So, Chris, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what the community really means right now.
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about this a lot for a long time. But here we are. We're recording on a day when there's a manhunt for a guy who shot a healthcare CEO.
Yeah.
There was an earthquake that might have triggered, it seems like it didn't trigger, a tsunami off the coast of California and Oregon. And yeah, just there's a lot of weird stuff going on. The world is getting weird. Um, and I know that can feel very scary. I feel, that same feeling. But a thing that I've always tried to do is try to think about what can I do with that? What useful energy can I, manifest that into where I'm not just like being anxious.
Right. Right. I just wanted to say. quickly, because this was so funny when we were talking about setting up the the podcast today, and I was asking you about what kind of mic you have, and you're like, "Oh, the mic on my headphones will work perfect," and you sent me a link to here are my headphones. Check them out, and I opened it up, and it was just like an earthquake map of the coast of California. I was
Yeah,
like,
it was
Chris, you
the
just sent me earthquake.
yeah, indeed. It was the kind of day where links were flying around so fast that I meant to send you an Amazon link to my headphones and accidentally sent you a link to the U.S. Geological Survey earthquake mapping website.
Which is
That's how
how
my
I
brain works.
that's how I learned that there was an earthquake. I didn't see anything about that earlier, but I do really appreciate your point about shit getting weird. The healthcare executive getting assassinated in broad daylight is shaping up to be one of those real sort of sea change moments in the public discourse and the way that we talk about things. And we just had a local, like, sort of micro sea change moment when David Webb got spray painted by the owner of the Italian restaurant on Shrewsbury Street.
Yeah,
And I am severely feeling that sentiment that shit's getting weird right now between those two things. And it's it's going to get crazy. And I think that a lot of my favorite writers and community activists around the country that I follow and pay attention to right now are really leaning into the concept of mutual aid and sort of renewing the sense that in this moment we kind of see like a certain end to electoralism. Like I think a lot of people are ready to just completely give up on the Democrats and the idea that Democrat equal good, Republican equal bad, and see the whole thing for what it's always been, which is just like a repressive and crumbling empire. And what are you to do with that information besides wallow, get anxious, or what most people do is just tune it out.
yeah,
Um, so the obvious and correct answer, I think, to that is getting involved in your community uh, and participating in exercises of mutual aid. Um, I have a few like specific examples I'd like to talk about, but I think before getting into those, it might be useful to just sort of hear where you're coming from on mutual aid and what your experience with it has been in the past.
yeah. So mutual aid is a thing I think about so much, and I have for a really long time. And I think this is probably gonna maybe initially sound weird as I describe it, but bear with me. But I grew up, among other things, I grew up in a firefighting family. And so, multiple generations of my family have been firefighters, mostly volunteer. I used to be a volunteer firefighter. I have firefighters in my family, etc. Mutual aid is actually a very cut and dry concept in emergency response, and it is, a very uh, often used concept, which is that, when something big happens, you can count on the departments and the people around you to come and help you, and just as they can count on you for the same. And so I've always thought about mutual aid in that way, and I think, it provides a useful framework for really everything that we're talking about. But yeah, the way that I look at mutual aid is this: mutual aid, to be distinguished from charity, let's say, mutual aid is when you and your community, people that you can get together in a group, any kind of, organized or disorganized group, take on some kind of task, and you just do it, and you do it simply, and you do it without regard of means testing or thinking about, like, does this person deserve what I am providing them? Do they really need it? Everyone really needs it.
Mm,
And you do it without regard for payback, right? Mutual aid means I might help you, Bill, 10 times, and you never help me. You're just never in a position to help me. You need help 10 times, and I need help 0 times. Or maybe I do need help, but you're just not there to provide it. Or, any other configuration of that, right? Like, um, I have this great skill that I can provide, and you have a different skill that's very useful to me. And maybe I use my skill 3 times, and you use your skill 7 times. The point is that it's not transactional,
mm,
and that it really is based in providing, you know, services and goods, and meeting needs, regardless or without thinking about you know what you can get back from it.
right. Yeah, and I think the best example to my mind locally is the community fridges, and
Absolutely.
how that just continues to be a valuable local resource that a small group of dedicated organizers and activists maintain, without help from the city government
Often
and
with interference,
right,
in spite of the city government.
in spite of the city government, and running them still for uh, years now to great success. Uh, little personal story, but um, my grandmother died recently, and my mom wanted to do something nice with all of the food in my grandmother's apartment, so she asked me if I could bring them to the community fridges because I had just told her about the community fridges. She's like, "Oh, that's such a nice idea." So that's like the first thing she thought of, uh, and I think that she knew about them because I was talking about a recent documentary, which we should link to if we remember to do that. That this local filmmaker Alex O'Neill made about the community fridges. There was like a screening at the White Room.
Yes.
A really really cool documentary. I'm interviewed in it, and those are the worst parts, but the overall it's amazing. Um, so she was stoked on that, and I was stoked to do it. I brought the food down to the Portland Street fridge, and I had an
My neighborhood
interaction.
fridge.
Yeah, yeah, right downtown, and the thing was empty, which is actually a good thing to see that. And I stocked it back up with everything from my grandmother's house, and then I took a bunch of collard greens and went home and made stewed up some collard greens for dinner because it wasn't charity that I went down there. It's like the fridge is there to use. If there's something in there that you want to use, just use it. Don't think about it twice. Don't think about how uh, somebody more needy than you could better use the bunch of collard greens in the fridge. It's that sort of mentality is something that you need to um, divorce yourself from because it implicitly implies that like it's a there's an other like the person in need of services or support is somehow different from you. Like you are the giver and they are the recipient. That's how you think about it in a charitable context. But to understand that there's no meaningful distinction between you and whoever else is using the fridge is a different way of thinking about it. And I think that that builds real like community solidarity in a time that we need it. interesting and very funny interaction I had while I was dropping the food off. There was this guy smoking a butt outside of his car, and he was like eyeing me the entire time as I was dropping the food off. And I was like, "Ah, shit, this guy's gonna talk to me. What's he gonna say? He's gonna." And it was like, what, 5 minutes? Didn't talk to me. Didn't say anything. And then I'm getting into my car, and he goes, "Excuse me, sir." And he asked me what the community fridges are all about. I tell him, and he goes, "The other day, I saw some Asians in $100,000 Mercedes go into the community fridge and take
Oh,
everything out of it." Uh, and he was like, "Yeah, I smoke my cigarettes outside of my car here all the time. I saw it. I saw it. Believe me, I'm a doctor. I saw it." And like, I just, it made me like just have to confront that sort of standard view that, like, if you try to do something nice, that scammers are going to take advantage of it. And it's like, why would you even bother to do it? So I thought of like what to tell this guy, uh, who I don't really even believe in the first place, honestly, but who like,
seems suspect.
right, right. But it's like, he, if it's a fiction, it's almost even more interesting that, like, he needs to invent in his head a way that, like, this, like, can't work, because there's going to be scammers that, like, abuse the system. So why would you try to do anything good? So all I said was, well, I hope they bring something back, you know. And then I told him, go ahead, if you're hungry or you want to cook anything in there, just grab something. That's what it's all about. It's not for like the needy and the homeless. Like he said that when he talked to me. He was like, I thought this was just for the needy or the homeless people. And I was like, no, it's for anybody, because there's no distinction between the needy and the homeless and yourself, just except for like a set of present circumstances. Uh, like they they could get an apartment tomorrow, and I could lose my apartment tomorrow. You know, so it's like the real thing about mutual aid is getting rid of that sort of uh, thing in your head, the othering in your head of like people who need to be taken care of, and understanding that everyone is in it together. Um,
Yeah, I have a lot of things I want to say. Let me see if I can remember to say them all. So the first thing I'll say is that the way I think about mutual aid and the way I think about a lot of organizing actually is um, as a foundational starting point to operate from a mindset of abundance and not of scarcity, right? Like there's actually so much stuff. There's so much food. Like we throw so much food. We throw more food away than everyone in the world could possibly eat
mhm.
if you want to be that reductive about it, right? And so I try to start from a mindset of not having a scarcity mindset, but a mindset of abundance. And yeah, there's a lot of this stuff. We can all, acquire these things and get these things, and we can share them with each other, and we can all have what we need. Um, and yeah, I think the story that you're talking about reminds me a lot of stories I hear, and it's a theme, and it's a theme that I noticed for years and years, specifically around when we're talking about vulnerable people, right? Like, so I've done work in the past on the panhandling ordinance that we had in Worcester that was
Mm.
overturned. It went up to the Supreme Court, et cetera, et cetera. The case is Thayer et al. The City of Worcester. That was a little piece of my history that I'm extremely proud of. I had a very, very little part in it, but I did have a part in it. And I remember um, around that time, before the ordinances, a thing that the city was doing was putting up actual signs, spending money on signs that said, stuff like don't give money and stuff to homeless people, like give it to charity. Um, and there was a lot of talk in city council and elsewhere about these organized gangs of panhandlers. They would all there was all this talk about how people were being dropped off from a van. And they would drop people off all around the city. This big scam of these people that I don't know live in a mansion on Salisbury Hill or something, who go out to beg for money every day. And yeah, I don't know if you've ever spent time standing on the street in all kinds of weather. I think you have. I have. Um, and it's not very fun. And begging people for money and mostly being ignored, if not like yelled at and cursed at and spit at or whatever. It's not the easiest way to make a dollar. Actually, it's a pretty hard way to do it.
Mm.
And so I think there's a lot of these like myths, and I've thought about this a lot. I thought about it a lot in the framework of the panhandling ordinance and things like that, and kind of the situation that we have now with the rise of homelessness and these sorts of things. And I think a thing that people would say to me a lot is well, I don't want to see that. And you know what?
Mm.
That's fair. I don't want to see that either. I hate seeing it. I live downtown. I live where it is right now. I also don't want to see it. But the mechanism for me to not see it is not for everybody to get scooped up and like thrown somewhere else or thrown in jail. It's
Mm.
to solve the problem. And I think the reason that people don't want to see it, if they can really get into their heart of hearts, is that it is a reminder, and I think it's actually a very intentional reminder. I don't think this is an accident that this is left in front of us, right? It is a reminder that there, but for the grace of God, go you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it could happen to you just as easily as it happened to those people, and people really need a construct to be able to say, oh well, that person's an addict. That person, they're a bum. They're a piece of shit. They're this. They're that. You have to find a way that to to understand why you are not in that situation and why they are.
Mm.
Because the reality that it, it could just as easily be you, except for your networks, except for your generational wealth, except for whatever number of privileges, is that's a really hard pill to swallow. And with the way the world's going, more and more people are having to swallow that pill.
Right. That is sort of what I meant when I said shit's about to get fucked. It's
Yeah,
not when I say that I'm not talking about Orange Man bad in White House.
yeah.
Of course, Orange Man bad.
Orange man
Don't
bad in
send
White House.
don't send me a message. Of course, it's baddies in the White House. Of course,
Everybody
Orange.
bad in White House, though. Actually,
Everybody bad. Everybody bad in White House. Senile man currently in White House, very bad. Uh,
yeah,
I think that I just have absolutely no patience anymore for any sort of like inclination that like the Democratic Party is better or different than the Republican Party. They are on the same team. They're just the one that performatively loses. But
yeah. I mean, I completely agree, and I mean, I have lots of thoughts on this, and I won't share them all right now. But what I will say is that I think so. I am recently unemployed, looking for work, mercenary for hire. If
Mhm.
anybody's got those sweet dollars, but I think about I've been thinking a lot about the liberation and the freedom that having all this time has afforded me. And I think that's an experience that a lot of people can understand in a way that for a long time was really hard to understand. But you know what made people be able to understand it was COVID.
Mm.
Early COVID, when everyone had to stay home, except for all the people who had to keep going to work, of course. But a lot of people got paid to stay home for the first time in probably their entire fucking lives.
Yeah.
And they also they got to have that experience of like I don't have to like rush out to go to my desk tomorrow. but also we got to see, I think people in a way that I don't think necessarily everyone has unpacked and understood, got to see that the government's not coming to help you. Like they're disinterested and probably actually incapable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they didn't come to help us. They told us not to wear masks because there weren't enough masks, and then they told us to wear masks, and then et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into like the depths of COVID stuff, but like I think we could all agree that like we didn't solve that problem. Like our government did
No.
not come to our aid to solve that problem. And I think that was really eye opening for people. It's like, holy shit, like we're kind of on our own here. Like all we got is us.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, the chilling realization that all along the government had enough money to pay people to not go to work, and it wasn't that
Yep,
big a deal. And
yep,
then after that, we saw, I think that this didn't really make the mainstream news, I suppose, but we saw the way that the Federal Reserve like saw that employees had too much power,
yeah.
so
Nobody
they
wants to work anymore.
they disciplined the entire labor market back into like the scramble pre-COVID on purpose with the interest rate adjustment, and
Yes.
now everyone is pretty much back to normal, whatever normal is. But things are getting things are just getting hotter. The heat is getting turned up because Worcester is not a unique city in any way, but what we're already seeing before this new regime of like increasing austerity comes into power is that the real estate is just unbothered by the harm that it causes communities. And in order for the real estate industry to continue making money, land land value has to go up and up and up forever. The rents have to go up and up and up forever.
Yep.
And there's no competing force for wage growth. So these issues of evictions, uh, foreclosures, homelessness, they're going to get worse, like a lot worse. There's no real light at the end of the tunnel here. So that the mutual aid comes back in sort of understanding, like really, I think you really have to sit with yourself and understand that like if you don't aren't able to mortgage a home right now, like that's probably not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
Like it, unless you really break out of your present circumstances and make a lot more money than you currently do. It's not about getting the promotion from one step up the ladder of whatever corporate structure you're working in. It's not going to be the thing that gets you to being a property landowner and all the political entitlements that used to ascribe for people.
Yeah, no, I think everybody really has the sense that they're chasing that, and that, it's a scramble just to try to keep up with that. And then, also, by the way, like, so let's say you do get the big promotion. What does that mean? I mean, I have talked to so many people in the last couple weeks, couple months, who made their career change, got their promotion, whatever, and then boom, downsizing, layoffs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's no security for anyone really.
Right.
Union workers to some degree a bit more, but most people aren't. Certainly, most of the highest salaried people aren't. And yeah, I completely agree with that.
My industry is a perfect example of the way that private equity and predatory uh, equity or predatory capital just destroys industries on purpose for short-term financial gain. You know, the whole ownership structure of newspapers. The reason why I'm doing this podcast, the reason why I have to put my work out on Substack as opposed to working at like an outlet is that companies buy up newspapers knowing that there's a lot of quote unquote fat to trim and money to be made in trimming the fat. And that is, we're seeing that, you know, more and more in, I would say that newspapers might have been like one of the early industries where that was happening. But I mean, the Stewart healthcare stuff is a perfect example of
Yeah.
that, uh, that modus operandi for expanding market cap and growth that is just coming more and more into industries and destabilizing them, and that like we're just seeing like the middle class erode in front of our faces in a way that neither party is offering a response to.
Yeah, I mean, it is, we are in late, late stage capitalism. That's what we're seeing. We're in it right now. Look around you. You can all see it. You can feel it. Um, Talking about Stewart Healthcare, I don't know if you caught the recent Chapo episode where they had a guest on who had done extensive research on the Stewart situation, uh, and really laid it out very succinctly and very well as the bust out, right? Like if you've seen Goodfellas or if you're familiar with what the bust out is, it's the bust out.
It's the
You
bust out.
and to explain the bust out for anyone who you should watch Goodfellas. Really, watch it again. Um, but the bust out is you get someone in a little bit of debt to you, you get them in over their head, and then they have this thing. Let's say it's a restaurant or a hospital. Um, you go in and you take everything of value out of it that you can. You order all the prime ribs you can, and you slip them out the back door and sell them for, 50 cents on the dollar or whatever. And you get all the liquor you can, and you don't pay your vendors. And, you don't pay your firm that does your laundry to clean the sheets and all this stuff. And you just extract every drop of value out of what is there. And when you're done extracting all of that value out, you light it on fire. And that's vulture capitalism. That's, you're watching it. You have seen it firsthand in, the media and journalism industry. Stewart is a perfect example. One of the first things they did, and the thing we've seen a lot of places, and I could go into a whole thing about everybody talking about Red Lobster. Red Lobster is another good example of a place where the value of the company originally, much like with Stewart, was the land and the property that those places owned. What's the first thing they do? They sell it and then they lease it back to itself at extraordinarily high rates that it can't pay, or that it pays until it runs out of money. It's the bust out. Yeah.
It's the bust out. And the important thing to understand, which informs the need for mutual aid in a big way, is that city halls, Worcester being a completely unremarkable example of it, are completely aligned to the general neoliberal impulse to incentivize private investment at all costs and at expense of everything else. And the entire Worcester Renaissance uh, was like an accident of history that private capital wanted to invest in Worcester land for a little while, and we're seeing that the investment climate is not it's not suitable anymore for private equity, and we are left stuck with development that's slowing down. This development that's promised as what's going to pull us out of the housing crisis and lower everybody's rents and we just need to build more housing. We just need to build more housing, aka we just need to incentivize private capital to do what it can to extract value from our communities. And that there's without meaningfully challenging that, it's not going to get better. And City Hall, as it's oriented right now, isn't just not it's not built to meaningfully challenge that. Um,
Yeah, and so I think, to try to pull us back a little bit from the doom and gloom, which I think everyone can understand. Although I think it is really important to articulate it, right? People need to hear that they're not the only ones feeling the way that they're feeling.
mm,
Everybody's feeling this way. We all have eyes. Um, Most of us have eyes, I guess. I
mhm.
shouldn't say that. That's ableist. But to bring it back, what is the solution that we have, or a solution that we can work towards? And mutual aid is the answer I come back to every time. And really, what that can look like is um, starting to build community structures that we make ourselves that are, bottom up, to try to solve usually initially simple problems that we can all solve, that we actually fully have the resources to solve. And there's a lot of great, I could talk for hours and hours about mutual aid. I will say I'm not necessarily Robert Evans, the podcaster, Robert Evans of Bellingcat. Uh, Not necessarily like his greatest fan overall. He did a great series during, from sort of the first time we got Trump into COVID, called "It Could Happen Here." I believe that's what it's
Oh
called.
yeah, so good.
Something
Yeah,
very much like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
so good.
and it talks a lot about like what the breakdown of this country would actually look like were it to happen. And listening to it, I started listening to it during early COVID, as as it was ongoing, and it was like, oh yeah, check, check, check. These things are happening, and really what that looks like. And um, I won't get super into that part for time, but what I wanted to say is that they talk a lot about actual mutual aid structures um, in practice, and that have been done. So, for example, after Hurricane Katrina, there were roving bands of people that were going out with firearms to hunt looters and look for people in neighborhoods that they didn't like and make sure they didn't come into their neighborhoods. um, and there was armed self defense that people set up as mutual aid in response to that. There was a lack of basic health care. So there were community mutual aid clinics that were set up where people could get basic health care for free from people that were able to provide it. And when there were threats to those, organizing efforts, people literally went with guns and stood outside of them and were like, no, you're not going to fuck with this, like we're here, this is our thing. um I guess, I just want people to understand that, like, take the gun stuff aside. We can build these structures. We have the skills. Like, we are the people who actually make, we being the workers, normal people, we're the ones who have the skills and have the goods, and we can do this. And so a couple of things that I sort of set for myself to kind of try to highlight as a way to think about this is, think about problems that you see, unmet needs that you see. And the first thing I think people should ask themselves is there already a solution to this problem? Is someone already trying to do this work? And if they are they doing it well, or are they not doing it well? If they're doing it well, maybe you could replicate it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't need to set something up. Maybe you need to join the effort that already exists. I'm not going to go make a community fridge system because there's already a great community fridge system here. What I can do is help the one that already exists. Um, if there isn't a solution, um, you know, who can you ask about what the needs are, um, and how can you learn who the best people to ask are? A foundational thing that I always tell people when I train new organizers that always seems to blow people's minds, but it's like very simple is if you want to help a group of people, if you want to help vulnerable people, go talk to them and ask them what they need. They'll tell you.
That's crazy.
So many people don't start there. They
Yeah.
spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars doing academic studies, blah blah blah, etc. And it's like just go ask them,
Mm,
what do you need? People will tell you what they need. They'll
right.
tell you the ideas they have to get to those things. Um, so yeah, I think I'll let you sound in here, but I think that's like a
Sure.
good starting point to as far as how to think about it.
Right. So, one of the ideas that I've been sort of toying with putting together uh, after the election, and given that we have a municipal election coming up, is that the city as a political structure can be used uh, toward the end of mutual aid. Um, there could be there is a possibility in which like a takeover of city hall would allow the scaling up of mutual aid supports, sort of like a municipality at odds with the federal government or the state that does things in sort of direct defiance, understanding that those things would still be sort of limited, because municipality really can't do all that much.
Yeah,
But
let me interject really quickly here,
yeah.
stop you just for a second and say if people want a real world example of this, there's multiple ones, but a good one that you can go poke around and look into is the history of sewer socialism, they call it,
Mm,
in the Midwest.
yeah.
I'll stop there. Go ahead.
Yeah, sewer socialism is a great example. There is a movement that I recently came across. Somebody on the Twitch stream sent a link to it, but it's called the Municipalist Movement, and it's a there's a chapter in LA, there's a chapter in Rio de Janeiro, and a couple maybe Barcelona, but it's an abolitionist politics, like specifically rooted around the municipality and how to use the municipality. So I think that some of this stuff might be a little ahead of a lot of, you know, average, decent, not weirdo people's thinkings, right? But it's kind of what we need to start building now. So the way that I'm kind of looking at this upcoming municipal election is this is an opportunity to lay the groundwork of the solidarities and like the fiber of a like connected mutual aid community, and do it through the shared goal of trying to at least inflict punishment on the city councilors that are just patently awful. Just like use this not so much as like not even in the terms of like progressive politics versus conservative, but like use the election to carve out space to try radical things. Um,
Yeah.
I think that that's something that I should probably lay out in the newsletter in more depth. I wrote about it one time right after the election, but there's a lot more to say about it, and um, I think that what we really need for um, a community that can like meaningfully defend its people against like the coming aggressions and excesses of the federal government during its Nero era. The end of empire is like uh, we need to combat atomization first, and people need to feel real solidarity and connection with each other, and a sense of togetherness and belonging that has sort of been like maybe probably intentionally stripped from the American public since the 1960s. You
Yeah,
know,
very intentionally stripped from the public.
yeah, yeah. Student loans were like part of that. Mortgages were part of that.
Yep.
The mortgage system. I was just reading this awesome book, Urban Warfare, about the global housing crisis and financialization. Like the USAID, like exported uh, mortgage backed economies and in property ownership as a goal to the global south. The they call it the Chilean model, but they did that in the 60s as a bulwark against socialism, to make people more conservative by nature of their owning their little plot of land, and as such less receptive to working class solidarity. Like it really, it's baked into the whole thing in foundational ways that people don't understand and shouldn't need to understand. But we shouldn't be so lonely. We shouldn't be so disconnected. And it's to our great detriment that it is that way. So I think that like there's a bigger uh, thing to be achieved with like creating some energy around the upcoming municipal election than a city council seat or a school committee seat. You know, there's like something more at stake, and I just think that it's a great entry point to pull people toward like the cause of mutual aid.
Totally. And the thing is, and Bill, I know we've talked about this before together many times, and probably individually, publicly many times, but it's such an attainable goal. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's hundreds of votes that
Right.
would fundamentally create a sea change in the Worcester City Council, and create an environment where we could really radically start talking about almost anything we want.
Right.
And uh, I'm an abolitionist, as I know I'm a prison abolitionist. I'm a abolitionist of a lot of what I consider to be oppressive systems, but um, people a lot of times the first question people ask you is, oh, well, what would you do about, worst case scenario? What would you do? And it's like you have to have an answer to that question. But actually, what's far more interesting and I think liberating to think about is, what would you replace it with? What are the systems that you
Mm-hmm.
can dream of that you would want to build? And I have so many ideas, and we're surrounded by smart, capable people who have so many ideas. And like, man, if we could just get to that starting point. And you don't even need the municipal government to do it, as evidenced by woo fridges and lots of other things. You can go out and do it yourself, and really make amazing things happen. But yeah, we're so close. We're so close to being in the position where we could fundamentally really change things. And there's never been a time like now where everyone is looking around being like, what the fuck is going, everything's broken, like
Right. Right.
nothing works, no
Yeah.
one's helping us, like the government is useless. So yeah, let's take that opportunity, let's do something better.
Yeah. I think that the it's the perfect time right now to start introducing big ideas. See what tracks. See what gets energy behind it. Um, and I think that that would probably be a more productive use of like the media channels that we've been able to build since the pandemic here, is to like put things on the table. Like I just did that recently with um, the the former Notre Dame church right downtown. It would be
My side yard.
your side yard, which is like an egregious example of the way that we've allowed uh, private equity and like this developer class to just run roughshod over the city. I don't need to get into all that right now, but like you could tomorrow with a city manager and a city council so inclined, instruct your police department that tell unhoused people to go there. You cut a hole in the fence. Tell unhoused people to go there. Say we're not gonna harass you there. We're not gonna fine you for trespassing there. Um, and give like some semblance of stability somewhere where they won't experience routine police harassment. And you could do that tomorrow, and
Yep.
automatically, the networks of support that already exist would have a central place to find and help people who need it that they haven't had since the city broke up the large encampment behind Walmart. That used to be the central point. You could uh, a city government so moved could do that tomorrow. And there's all sorts of studies out there, blah 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 blah, about the effects, like the positive effects of doing that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, I want people to know, for people who don't know me, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that's my side yard. The property you're talking about is 500 feet from where I'm sitting.
yeah.
And the people are already here, and
Mm-hmm.
they're being mercilessly hunted and pushed around and oppressed and harassed, into like literal madness. And that's what I experience them going through every day in my own neighborhood. And I'm telling you, as a neighbor to that property, yes, please, let's do that.
Mm,
That fence didn't have a chain on it for a while, and people did start to kind of go and live in there, and then they got wise to it and threw everybody out
mm,
and chained it up. But yeah, please, please, that would be better than what we have. It's not the solution. I want those people to have real housing, but
mm,
if until we can get them that, let's give them something. We could pick up the trash there. We could drop water there. We could put, porta potties there. We can have places for people to have their basic needs met. And I'm
mm.
telling you, please, as a neighbor to that, as the closest neighbor to that, please do it. It would be so much better for everyone, including me.
Right, right, and like the the reasons why the current administration of the city would like balk at that proposal are very revealing. It would require a fundamental shift in ideology that like landowners aren't a special class, developers aren't a special class deserving of special entitlements, and you could actually meaningfully like pressure them to do more. Even viewing this in the most cynical of terms, like you could use the campsite that you sanctioned to be like, well, if you don't like this, like you got to start doing something with this property, you
Yeah,
know?
the property right now is a literal hole in the ground with a
Yeah.
fence around it. And it has been for several years. It has changed ownership. There have been announced project after announced project to build housing there, all of which have been scuttled. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a completely useless property that is doing nothing for anyone. And it has been that way for years.
Since 2018 when they took the church down,
Yeah,
and
so let's do something with it.
the current yeah the current property owner is trying to sell it. Like they proposed housing on there, and now they're trying to sell it again.
Yep.
It's like there nothing is going to happen there for a long time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that it's useful, and it's kind of nice, interesting to talk these out in a podcast type situation as opposed to preparing like a written case for it, because when you like, I think that we do need to just be like spitballing here on like what are some things that we could do that are radically different in the spirit of mutual aid and like center residents of the city over like the weird cabal of uh, property speculators that we have historically been beholden to that have made downtown Worcester a museum of bad ideas. Like, okay, so Polar Park is funded with a DIF district, right? Um, what would be stopping the city from creating a DIF district around a municipally funded public housing project?
Yeah, nothing.
Like, how much housing could $160 million build? A good amount, I imagine.
Yeah.
And what would that look like? Someone who's smarter than me would have to put together that pro forma. But
I mean, I'll say this, Bill, maybe, but also like honestly, at this point, I'm pretty tired of being told that like not by you, but in general that the smart people need to come in and handle this because the smart people are A, sociopaths, and B, actually don't seem to be that smart. They're
right.
idiots. So let's try some things.
Mm,
It's okay to try things and not have them go perfectly and learn from that. That's how you develop this muscle. But yeah, let's
right.
try some things. Let's start small and simple and let's try some things.
Yeah. I mean, like there's so many vacant storefronts and properties downtown.
We are not wanting for places that we could put things.
Right.
We're,
Right.
we're a city of abandoned factories
I know.
and lots of open land.
Yeah. I mean, like there really would be nothing stopping a city from like a de facto non-enforcement of squatting, right? Like,
Yeah,
like just tell people go to this empty building, right? Like, we're not going to we're not going to prosecute you for
yeah.
doing that.
And I'm really tired. First of all, the city, when it wants to, loves to throw around conversations about eminent domain, but it's always for the redevelopment of commercial property into more attractive commercial property. It's all in service of capitalism, and also they never actually do it.
Yeah, right,
Uh,
right. It's
but
just bluster.
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it for real. Let's take those properties and build publicly useful things on them. Let's house people. Let's, make spaces where people can be and gather and have a place to be where they don't have to buy shit just to be there.
Right.
It's, etc.
A youth center. I mean, that's something that Bernie Sanders did when he was mayor
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Burlington. And actually, I was poking around the other day, and this would make for an interesting piece, or maybe like an interesting whole podcast episode, is to like look at what some socialist mayors have done in the past. Because I was reading up on it. There's a good article in the Nation. Bernie Sanders, like first day, he goes after a market rate uh, apartment development in the works and says this isn't going to happen. It's going to be affordable, and like it worked, and like everyone in the city like rallied behind him for that, and it was like his first real battle, and it's like he launched his entire like political career on that.
Yeah. I love
So
to sorry. I love to always think about how can I explain, how can I convince someone of what I want who's a sociopath? Um, and here's how you do it. In this particular example, Bernie Sanders, uh, in his early mayoral career in Burlington, did open a youth center and did open public spaces. And among other things, it created an incredible arts and music scene.
mm-hmm.
Burlington had a fantastic punk scene because of these spaces that opened. So when I say I want to explain something to a sociopath, even if you don't give a shit about these people who are suffering and dying in the streets, do you like art? Do you like music?
Right.
Because we're not going to have any in Worcester if every available space is thousands of dollars a month to rent. We're already seeing it. I don't need to explain this to anyone with, every cool thing that we have closing and going away.
Yeah. I mean, Redemption Rock, perfect example. Uh,
The
the
bridge, et cetera, et
yeah.
cetera.
And that's something that when I started this newsletter, I would write about a lot about how, because it was like when this sort of new um, property value regime was first taking hold in Worcester during like the young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed days of the Worcester Renaissance. We were losing so much cool stuff, and Worcester was losing its character, and it was like sort of ceasing to be um, the city that like people actually enjoyed and could afford, and like what made it weird and cool was that it was cheap, uh, because
It's why I moved here and stayed here.
right,
Literally.
same, uh, and I used to it. I guess it would be a good thing to revive, make the case that like what Worcester officials want is to be on the map, to have like prestige and to have cachet and to like feel like they can be proud of their city. The way that you really do that like is through like arts and uh, like through like actual genuine community and like the like cool neighborhoods and good art scenes and good music scenes are all something that cannot be authored or um, paid for by a government. They have to be allowed to flourish and grow. Worcester has done the opposite of that every single fucking time that they've been given the choice. The bridge being the most perfect example. Like a city hall so motivated in that situation could have made sure the bridge is still here today. Like they could have easily done that.
It was
Uh,
a six-figure problem.
right. It's nothing. That's pennies. They
Yeah.
could have easily made sure that all of the creative energy that went into the bridge was maintained and allowed to foster and flourish and develop, and it would have been to the city's great credit. And the sociopaths in the city manager's office and in the economic development office, sure, fine, take credit for all the good that would have come from that, all the new talent that would have emerged from that, the sense of vibrancy, the all the shit that looks good on a brochure, the shit about a city that makes people want to move to the city or visit it would have come out of that place had they just taken bare minimum steps to intervene in the real estate market to make it so, but they didn't. And
Yeah.
and now the 21 apartments or whatever that were supposed to go in there, they haven't started building those. It's just been sitting empty, like
It's
a fucking tombstone of a moment.
yeah,
Uh,
let me offer a bold prediction and say it's never going to happen. Who the fuck wants to live in a luxury condo below a railroad bridge
an
where you get
active,
like 15 minutes of sunlight every day?
yeah,
Next to a bunch of abandoned factories. No, nobody. Um,
absolutely insane. The
yeah,
the real estate speculators that bought that place like didn't even know what they were doing. They were just like, "Oh, Worcester's up and coming.
yeah.
I can make windfall profits." They're probably trying to sell the plot of land right now.
By the way, right across the street from there, until it closed down because of speculative real estate deals, was the Worcester Flea Market, the new
Mm,
old Worcester Flea Market, which
right.
had originally been in Kelly Square. But the Worcester Flea Market was there. I used to go to the Worcester Flea Market a lot. I bought records there mostly. I had a guy. Don't ask me about him. I already bought all of his records, but you'd go in there and it was stuff like that, but also like a place where you could buy, $5 jeans, or like, you know 75-cent shampoo that probably fell off the back of a train or whatever. It was like actually a very useful space for people, and
Mm,
people used it. Like, the Worcester flea market did not disappear because no one was going there. It disappeared because it couldn't afford to exist in that real estate anymore.
right. Yeah, and that's like repeat that story over and over again, and that's basically been the story of the past 4, 5, 6 years in Worcester. It's just something cool, can't hack it because of the real estate market, and the city could be doing what it can to intervene in that, but it's just so ingratiated to it and beholden by it that it can't. So
Yeah.
I think that in this sort of like post election moment, as we head into the municipal election, the time right now is really good to just start pitching what what problem locally could be solved by mutual aid. How could the city as an entity further that goal? How could city resources be expended in the furtherance of that goal? Uh,
Yeah, and let me break it down even a little bit further than that. I think that's very true and valid. But as people are, I think as we're probably starting to, kind of wind down and, talk about, I guess what you call action items. That's a really good point. And also, it can be even simpler than that. Mutual aid is the simplest things you could do. Mutual aid is Bill has no gas in his car and he needs $20, and I have $20 I don't really need right now. I give it to Bill so he can go get the things done that he needs to do. He can, get his newsletter done on time, whatever. Mutual aid can be so simple. It's creating and fostering real, genuine, non-transactional relationships with people, anyone, people you already know, people you don't know yet, doing those things, and then really starting to figure out, like, where can I plug in, where what do I have that other people have less of that I can share. And it can literally cost nothing. You don't need money, necessarily, although money is many times as helpful. uh but it can really be that simple. I have an abundance of eggs because I have a farm with hens. This person has an abundance of podcasting knowledge. We can share those things, and I promise you, as someone who's been there and is really focusing a lot of my life and my energy on trying to create these systems of community resilience, really true, genuine, simple systems like that. It costs nothing and it feels so good.
mm,
It feels good to help people, and it feels good to accept help when you need it. And so, yeah, I really hope people can think about that and, like, maybe get out of, the darkest part of the dark place that you might be in right now.
yeah, I think that's a fantastic note to leave this discussion on if I've ever heard. Uh, this has been fun. I think that this is going to be a great thing to do weekly. It's nice to just sort of like take a step back and casually talk about some of these things that I put so much hard work into writing about, and then just be able to riff on it here, and the same goes for you. I don't even think about this stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, this is so much fun. I want to do it as often as we can, and I really hope we can make this a thing. And I want to tell people that, if you do get interested and engaged, Bill and I think are trying to make the best commitment we can to make this a regular thing that you can count on.
yeah.
And yeah, Bill, is there anything you want to plug or talk about before we?
Um, well, okay, yes. December 14th, Worcester Sucks will have a booth at the punk rock flea market at the Hotel Vernon. It's a pretty cool. regular local event that has been going on for like a year now, and it's just like people come up, set up like vendor shops with all sorts of fun stuff, and it's going to be from 1 to 7 at the Hotel Vernon on the 14th. And I'll be there with merchandise, which I'm trying to make at my second job, doing merch more actively. So I will be there. Also, I need a someone to run the Instagram for this because I just won't do it. So I need so if anybody wants to be Instagram person for Worcester Sucks, hit me up and we'll talk about it. I can probably throw a little bit of money your way, but not a lot.
Mutual aid
So
in practice, baby.
yeah. So, but I will be a reference for your next social media job, and I'll make it sound like what you did was way more legit than what you did, which is how the professional world goes around. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, Chris, Eddie.
Polish that piece of shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're all about polishing turds. So yeah, Chris, anything you got? Any closing notes?
No, no. Except to say that it was really fun to do this, and I hope people listen to it and enjoy it, and if you do, we'll keep doing it.
Sick. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been episode 1 of Outdoor Cats, and we will
Outdoor cats.
smell you later.
Later.